What if I told you you can connect your XML layouts directly with your view models so that you don't have to deal with any fragment code? Well, today we're going to update our Cupcake shopping app to work with data binding. Let's get started. Data binding was announced in Google I/O 2015, and its purpose was to help you avoid using find view by ID. To do this, you would use this @ and the curly braces syntax, and then you could just refer to the properties that are in your view model right inside of your XML files. Let's add that to our app. To enable data binding, we just need to go to our app's build.gradle file, and we're just going to add one line inside of the build features. Now we can begin converting our layout files to use data binding. We can do this by wrapping our linear layout or our root element in a layout tag, and we can do this manually, or we can use this neat shortcut by clicking on the root element tag and then clicking on this light bulb menu, and then we're just going to select convert to data binding layout. This adds the layout element tag. It moves your namespaces out of the linear layout and up here into the layout tag, and it adds this data section here. And here we're going to add reference to our view model as a variable. Great. So now we can add one line here to our fragment where we're going to assign the view model instance that we have here to the variable we just created in the layout. Also, as you can see, we are assigning the cart message directly to the order total amount text view that's in our layout. We're going to be replacing that by having the view model communicate directly to the layout file. So I'll show you here the view model. We have this generate cart message method, and we're just going to have our layout file call that directly. So we're going to go here to our text view, and instead of this string resource, we're going to keep that @ and then we're going to add our curly braces, and then we can just call the method from our view model directly. Awesome. So now we can go back to our fragment and just delete this line. And now we'll run our app and make sure that it's all working the same way. So this part of the app is going to work exactly the same because we haven't actually done anything to the code for the product detail fragment. But if we hit checkout, we can see that the cart message is being generated correctly. And if we don't add any cupcakes to the cart, now we can see that the empty cart message is being also generated correctly. And this is all done from the view model, and it's being sent directly to the layout file. So now let's edit the product detail. So here in the product detail fragment layout, we're going to convert this scroll view to also use data binding. We select convert to data binding layout. And then here in our data tag, we're going to add a reference to our view model. Awesome. So now we go over to our fragment, and then we're going to assign this view model instance to the variable we created in the layout. We also need to add one line to set the viewLifecycleOwner because our view model is using LiveData. And if we scroll down here, we have to make one small adjustment. This is expecting a scroll view, but it found a view. So we're just going to cast this view as a scroll view, and it should be able to hide the keyboard without any issues. All right, so let's go back to our product detail, and then we're gonna start with we're gonna start here with our checkout button, and then we're gonna set the text. Right now it's expecting the order total to be passed from the view model, and then we're just gonna pass that directly to this string resource. Great. So now we can go back to our fragment. And now this line that sets the text value for with the order total, we no longer need it because we're going to be setting it directly in our layout file. The onClick listener we can keep. Great. And now let's run the app, make sure everything's working. Now we can check that adding cupcakes to our cart updates the checkout button correctly. And of course, clicking the checkout button takes you to the shopping cart fragment. Now let's update the stock count message here in this text view, and then we're going to update also the add to cart button. So looking here in our fragment, we can see that we are setting the stock count message with whatever we have in remaining stock. However, if the stock is 0, we are disabling the add to cart button, and we're also setting the color, changing the color of the stock count message text view to red. So we're going to, and we're also updating it to say out of stock. So now we're going to be doing that directly inside of our layout file. All right, so back here in our layout file, we are going to change the color. And we are going to set this. This is where you start to see the power of data binding and all the things you can do. We're going to set this to a conditional expression that will check how much stock you have left. And if it's 0, it's going to change the color to red. If you still have cupcakes remaining, then we'll keep the color as blue, as what we had before. Great, and now we're going to do something very similar with the text that we're setting here. We're going to set the text view to also update the message that gets displayed from the amount of cupcakes or remaining stock that we have available to out of stock if the remaining stock is 0. So we'll do something very similar to this. Great. So here you can see that we are checking to see how much stock we have remaining. And if it's 0, then we are setting the out of stock message that we get from our string resources. And if it's not 0, then we can set our the remaining stock that we have from the view model, pass it over to our stock message, just as we're doing in the fragment. And we're also going to be doing the same thing here. If remaining stock is 0, set the color to red. And if it's not, then leave it as blue. So now we can go back to our fragment code and we can just delete. We don't need to set the stock count message anymore. We also don't need to set the string, the out of stock message, or the change the color to red. And we can also go ahead and disable the add to cart button. Great. So if the remaining stock property from our view model is 0, we are going to set enabled here to false for our add to cart button. Otherwise, it's going to stay enabled. And now we can go back to our fragment code and delete this if check that we have here. And we actually no longer need to be observing our remaining stock from our view model. So we can just delete this whole section of code. And now let's run our app, make sure everything's working correctly. Great, so now we can add cupcakes to the cart, and we can see that our stock count message is decreasing. And once we run out of cupcakes, then our stock out of stock message displays. It also displays as red, and our add to cart message is disabled. Now, one last bit of code here that we can replace in our product detail fragment is we're setting the onClick listener for the add to cart button, and we are taking the number of cupcakes that the user selected or user wants to add to the cart, and we are passing it over to this method from our view model, the onAdd button clicked. So now we can call this directly from our layout file and give it the order quantity. Now let's see how to do that. So we're gonna add an onClick listener here. We're just gonna select this Android onClick. And then here, we're gonna use the same syntax, the add and the curly braces, and then we are going to pass a lambda which is going to call the method from our view model. So product detail view model, and we're going to say on add button clicked. And let's take a look at that method real quick. So on add button clicked requires an integer to be passed in. So if we look at our fragment code, here we see that we are taking the quantity, the text from our quantity number text field or text view, and then we're converting it to a string and then to an integer. So let's go back to our product detail fragment, and then here we are going to say that the quantity number, and this quantity number is referring to this edit text that we have up here. So we're taking this exact ID and we're passing it here to this view. So as you can see, we can reference other views within the layout XML. And we're going to get the text, get text, and then we are going to convert that to a string. And now we need to convert all of this to an integer, and you actually can't say like to int here, so we just need to select this entire thing. And say integer parse int. All right. Now, if you're thinking this seems way too complicated, I thought the same thing, and I don't think it is best practice. I'm just including it here to show you what all you can do with data binding. But we'll talk about why this may not be the best use of data binding in a moment. So let's remove that code from the fragment here. So we no longer need to call this method. But we're going to leave this hiding of the keyboard there for now. Great, so now as we click on the add to cart button, it is adding the correct amount. So we have 1 cupcake multiplied by 5. Right now it's just adding $5, but if I say I want, we have 2 remaining, so I'm gonna add 2 cupcakes. I should add $10 to the cart. So 25, and this is still working correctly. I can check out. And yes, so if you were thinking that that's conversion here in our layout file seems way too complex, I did find one article that mentioned the basically outlined several different points on why you probably shouldn't use data binding to do these complex operations. So yes, this excellent article by Tim Mutton was a great eye-opener. The main point that I think is important to highlight is separation of concerns. When you're he says that it encourages introducing presentation logic in your XML files. So, and here it's saying you're conditionally showing or setting the visibility of a view based on a property in your view model, which is exactly what we did for the add to cart button. We were calling a method and then also having to convert the parameter to an integer, to a string, then to an integer. So way too complex stuff to be doing inside of just the layout file, because you want your layout file to be responsible for just update or displaying the views. So really great article. I'll link it in the description, and if you want to have a read. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this useful, check out my live data tutorial, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.